Next, we're going to head over to archive.org. Once you get over there, you're going to type in History of Sullivan's Campaign Against the Iroquois. Once again, archive.org, and type in History of Sullivan's Campaign Against the Iroquois. I reserve the right to use this later on regarding the Sullivan and Clinton campaign, which will be instrumental in proving not only Washington's involvement, most certainly Sullivan and Clinton's involvement, and the whole idea of them moving upon the Iroquois Nation and the five tribes of the Iroquois, from the Mohawk to the Seneca, moving east to west, destroying crops, killing people, which would later end up in the aristocrats of the time, and even in Albany, the government officials taking the land of the Iroquois, basically stealing the land of the Iroquois, and then resulting in what we have today as far as the metropolitan state of New York State, metropolitan city of New York, and what we see has become of New York State, which is really very few references regarding the Sullivan and Clinton campaign. Yeah, you see historical markers, but you don't see the preserved history of the Iroquois people like you should. And I believe that started before the Sullivan and Clinton campaign, and was most certainly a device used by Washington later on to move upon the Iroquois. About halfway down the page, a little bit more, a little less halfway down, and I quote, "A friend of Washington, Greene, Lafayette, and all the noblest states and men and generals of the war, whose esteem for him was universally known, to whom his own attachment never wavered, he will be valued for his high integrity and steadfast faith, his loyalty and generous character, his enterprise and vigor in command, his readiness to assume responsibility, his courage and coolness in emergencies, his foresight in providing for all possible contingencies of campaign or battlefield, and his calmness when result became adverse." And you can find that in AMORY apostrophe S memorial sketch of Sullivan's life. That's depicted there as well too. But I want to use this as a key reference to show that, like I said initially, that Lafayette may not have had direct connection to the Sullivan and Clinton campaign later on during the Revolutionary War, but most certainly had an indirect connection, and most certainly had, as I've already established, wartime advice given to Washington that would later allow him to make decisions that were most certainly against the Iroquois people's livelihood, farm life, way of life, the land that they owned, and just the way that they lived. And we see that throughout that time period, and we also see this with Washington. We see this with Jefferson. We see this whole ideology of an Indian removal policy, whether it's written or not. We definitely can see that We see that in Jackson's administration, how he moved upon the Cherokee people and made them walk the Trail of Tears. Well, from Washington to Jackson, they all had an Indian removal policy. And Lafayette, this would prove that Lafayette, if he wasn't directly connected, he knew of those removal policies and probably advised Washington of just that.